Okay. And if we check that the Zoom guys can hear us okay? Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you for coming to this session on serials and binding. So it's going to be, there are four of us presenting in this session, so lots of faces. I'm going to start. I'm Owen Stevens, and I'm product owner for the serials management module. And then we have Joe Reimers, who's a product owner for acquisitions and covers claims and binding. And we have Peter and Kirsten from GBB and VZG, who are both funded work on the serials module and helped inform the functionality there. So I'm going to start. Talking about the kind of the development of serials functionality in Folio, and I want to go back to 2022 when, and I don't think this was news to anybody, I should say, but an initiative was started to identify and bridge the gaps in Folio functionality, specifically in relation to print serials. And this was something that had been raised several times in at previous WOLFcons and face-to-face meetings, as well as other venues, but had never really received, I think, dedicated attention. And I think it's fair to say that for many of us, for many libraries, the number of print serials being managed is not huge numbers, and that's probably why it had not got to the top of the priority list. But those of you who are still managing print serials, even if it's small numbers, it is a really important part of your collection and has a number of processes associated with it that can be very time-consuming if they're not managed well. So VZG, on behalf of the GBB Library Network in Germany, and Duke University, worked with Knowledge Integration, a software development company in the UK, and myself as a product owner to define what was missing, what were those gaps. And this is kind of the output of that gap analysis. And it's actually a slightly simplified version of the diagram I drew at the time. But essentially, the things in colour all existed already, and the things in white did not. So essentially, this boiled down to us missing the concept of a publication pattern that would be able to create repeated sets of pieces for serial check-in. So if you have a monthly serial, then obviously in a year there would be 12 issues, and you want to check those in. If it's weekly, there'll be 52 or 53, depending on the year and the day of publication. And if it's down to daily, 365. Issues a year or 366 and leap year. And obviously, if you have to create those every time one comes in, it's an overhead. And also, there's no way of tracking the things that didn't arrive. If you're just creating them when they turn up on your doorstep, what about the one that didn't come? You don't have any record that you expected it, so you don't know that there was something now to claim. So when you order a book, a monograph, you order 5 copies. If you receive, and we expect 5 copies, and then when 4 turn up, you've got 1 to claim. With a serial, like you're saying, we're going to have this serial for the next 5 years. There'll be 12 a year maybe, but there was no way of kind of making sure that every year there would be 12 issues to check in, and if one didn't arrive, there was going to be a claim for that. And in terms of binding, obviously, when you receive things, it could create items, and that already happened. But obviously, when you receive serial items, you may not keep them as individual items, but you may bind them into volumes. for preservation and for convenience. And so like you eventually want to group together those things and have them bound into a single volume. So changing essentially your items into single item volumes. Okay, so yes, I should have brought this up first, highlighting those areas. So having done that kind of initial work, BZG and Duke pooled funding and engaged knowledge integration and myself to develop new serials functionality in Folio. And the priority, the thing that we made the priority of the after discussion with them was the publication patterns and the automation of those expected pieces based on the patterns, which was their highest priority. And when we were looking at this, we obviously didn't want to build some kind of separate special serials like receiving piece module. We didn't want to build kind of something that was completely separate to the existing order acquisition receiving process. So we did do some consultation through other institutions and through the acquisitions SIG, and the feedback was that kind of automated prediction patterns would be very welcome. But additionally, there was still this need for binary for claiming, and claiming especially, I think, was something that people were particularly concerned about. Perhaps not just for serials, but generally. And so with Joe Reimers and Dennis Bridges as the product owners in orders and receiving functionality, we decided we'd do a close integration with those modules so that, and that would allow, for instance, for claiming to be developed once against the receiving pieces, not us do a claiming for serials and then do a claiming for monographs or anything like that. So the result on our side of that, which I can talk about and Peter will later demonstrate, was a new module in Folio, which allows you to set up publication patterns, link them to purchase order lines and receiving titles, and predict expected issues that they're expected on a particular date, and that they have the correct chronology and enumeration labeling. So when you get a serial issue, typically it will have maybe a volume number or an issue number, or both, or something else, or maybe even 3 layers of numbering. There are different patterns for this. It might include the month or the season. If it's like a 4 times a year, it might be labeled as the autumn issue or the fall issue if you're in the US. And so what we wanted to do was have a way of doing that generate. So you say like a pattern would be, we get 4 issues a year. It comes on the 1st of January, the 1st of March, the 1st of May, or July, the 1st of November, whatever that pattern is. And they're called winter, spring, summer, fall, or they're called volume 1, issue 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever that pattern is. And our aim was to essentially have a system where you could put in that information once for a serial, and then it would predict the issues for the year. And that for each issue we predicted, we would create a receiving piece in receiving, so that that was ready to receive and had a due date, so that if there were any claiming functions associated with that, then that could kick in when if they didn't appear by the expected date. It did also require us to, one of the things with the chronology and enumeration and the labeling of the issues is that because that's kind of every journal is special, if you like. I mean, there are some very common patterns to have, say, volume and issue, but even then, if it's a German publication, it won't be volume and issue, it will be, other terms for other languages. So it won't always be labeled in that explicit way. And we didn't really have, we had some fields in receiving, and we had some other fields in inventory that kind of could record some of that information, and people were already using those in different ways, but there wasn't a single kind of standard way that everybody had implemented that. And there wasn't quite the structure that we found we needed when we were doing the serials prediction stuff. So the way we decided to bridge that ultimately was to take a single field that was going to be called display summary, and that would be used for serials in the serials module, it'd be used in receiving, and it'd be used in inventory. And that was a place where we could put that kind of textual description of what the issue was. So it's the spring 2024 issue, volume 1, issue 2, that kind of labeling. And that can go across. And also there was work on the inventory side, ultimately that to create the structures where that could feed out to discovery as well. So that could be present in the discovery systems as well. And so all the time we were trying to work closely together, but we were working in parallel on these things. So what we'd like to show you today, I think Peter will show you the prediction patterns and the way the serials module works. Joe will be demonstrating, I think, talking about binary and claiming a little bit. Kirsten will be talking about the process of actually getting here in terms of like funding it, and I think, yeah, organizing it, and where we go next with that. Because I think we're one of a few kind of modules, the serials module, certainly one of a few modules that's been funded by the community, and particularly by GBV in this case, who fund a number of modules. But so I think there's a good discussion to have there. You may have questions about the detail of some of the stuff that Peter and Joe have to show you. I'm sure, I think what I'd say is if you can really make a mental or physical note of those and hold them to the end, so you've seen everything we've talked about before you ask the questions, because I'm going to be coming back and talking about our future plans as well. So we might be addressing some of your questions later on in the presentation, then we'll save the questions for the end. But I know you'll have, if you have questions about the detail of something that Peter shows you, you might need to make a note, because otherwise you'll forget what the question was. And with that, I'll pass over to Peter.
It's the first one. Yeah, just hit escape. Just hit escape. And then the other tab on the right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so thank you, Owen, for your introduction. My name is Peter Spesny. I'm working at the GBV head office, which is also known as VZG in the community. And so now we want to come to the practical side of our development. I'm working here on the Quesnavia installation. This is the first release in which Serials app is available. Yes, and to create a serials record, we need to have an order for a title in the first place, because the serial is linked to a POL. And so in this case, I will go to orders and can choose an order which has already been created earlier, or I can create a new one, which I will do now. And I have prepared the template for our presentation for the serials demo, which includes all the essentials. I have to choose a vendor. I need an order type as ongoing, and yes, I have introduced here a renewal interval, and I could fill up many of the other fields too, but it's not necessary for a serious demonstration. I've here already attached a link, a note, which means that this order is linked to a serial record, or it will be linked to a serial record later on. So I've created a new purchase order, and now I will add a PO line for this to this order. So I have here the possibility to do a title lookup, but I've decided here to put it in by myself. And what is important in the PO line details is that we get an independent order and receipt workflow, because we are working here with an ongoing order, and we don't want to receive only once, but there are several pieces to be received. In the PO line details, we have here purchase, and it's a physical resource because we are working for print subscriptions here right now. And what I can also do here is to set claiming active, and put in here a claiming interval. Numbers are meaning days. So, for example, when I create my receiving piece, and it is expected, this will be the interval which is added to the expected date, so that the piece gets late. So let's say here that we have, for example, 30 days as the first claiming interval. Okay, to make it complete, I give here a physical unit price. Let's say we have $100 for quantity of one electronic unit price is not needed. I have also set up in my template a fund distribution. This is a serials fund for an expense class of print, which covers all the costs that will be produced by this order. We have already here a location, and yes, we have here create inventory and material type journal print, and so I can now save and open the order. So this has been successful, and now I can switch to the Serials app. As Owen already mentioned, this is a new app which appears here on the app list. So this is a serials app, and there are already some serials present, because this is a Bugfest installation where quite a lot of people already have worked on. And we have here a choice between serials and piece sets. Piece sets are these sets for the serials which have already been created in the serials app. You can list them up here, and you can also see when it has been generated, how many pieces there are, when it starts, and you can add notes to it. But to create a new serial, I would have to go here to serials, and there I have the menu new, and can open it up and get this screen for a new serial. And the first possibility that I have here is to connect this serial to an existing POL. And so I will be looking up the order lines, and this one on the top, this is a new one that I just created. And I link it here to the serial record to see the PO line appears here. There's a link to the PO line from here. You have also a link to the vendor in the organization app. You can also see in the finance app the fund that I have introduced in my order. So these links all work. This is quite useful that you can have a look at these parts from this site here. And of course, you can also go to the title in inventory. Well, what's to do now? We have a mandatory field which is called status. We have status active or closed. Active means this is a serial which really is active, which is not has not ceased publication, which is not cancelled. So you can enter here a description of the serial. I have entered here my POL number because in this way I will be able to look it up, and I can also indicate here, for example, that this is here volume 1 from 2024. And following, or whatever I want to use as a description. There's also a notes field where you can add further details. So now I can save and close. And I have a new serial record here. I can use the search menu here to find what I have been creating right now. This was a journal of Wolf research, so I can look it up here by title, or I can also look it up by the prefix that I attached to the POL in the first place. And so you here get an overview what I have entered in my serials that I have created as description. So you can see here now what is covered by these different records. So I choose my newly created serial record right now, and I can see here what was on display when I created it already. I have an action menu where I can edit this record once again if something is missing. So I can also replace the PO line at this stage. But I think this would only make sense as long as no key sets have been created. The other thing in the action menu is generate predicted pieces. This is a real interesting part, but we're not so far to do it right now because in the first place we have to set up a publication pattern, and this you can see this here at the bottom of the screen. We have here in the column for publication pattern, and it said there's no active publication pattern yet, but we have now the opportunity to add publication pattern. So here once again, when creating a new publication pattern, we have a status field, which is mandatory. We have 3 possibilities. Active is used for the serials pattern, which is in use right now. Deprecated can be for an earlier pattern which is no longer used after a new active one has been created. And we can also add a draft, for example, if we get informed that the publication will change the way it is published in the next year, so we can already prepare it here and set it on draft and make it active when the time has come. So here in the description, I could, for example, enter a pattern for 2024. So now let's say we come to the publication cycle, and here it gets very detailed. We have the first place is cycle length with time units. What does this mean? For example, let's say we have a journal here which appears once a month. Let's say it has 2 volumes a year. Each of it has 6 issues. And it appears every month. So I can, in the first place, choose in time unit. I have the possibility to pick out days, week, month, or year. And for example, if I choose month, I can say number of months that we have 1 month, and there's 1 issue published in 1 month. And then I have the next field to choose. This is a day format. Here I can choose between yes, a real date, for example, the 1st or the 31st of the month, which would open me to say here issue 1 is published on, let's say, the 3rd day of a month. The other possibility would be to choose a day of the week. Let's say the issue will appear on Wednesday of the 3rd week. And as you see, when I do it this way, I only have 1 issue, but this would mean that for each month in the period and the cycle that I have used, it will be on the same day. You can also do it the other way around. If you don't choose month, then you could take here a year and say we have 1 year and there are 12 issues to be published in the cycle. And when I just say day format, then we have the opportunity to enter days of months. So it could be very granular. I don't know if it's really needed. Usually, I think for most of the journal libraries, we would not exactly know that issues will be published on the 10th of January, the next one on the 12th of February. So that would be enough to say, okay, it's always on the 10th of a certain month. But if you like to do it in this way, you can arrange it here. And so you would have to set up for each of the 12 issues this publication, days of publication in this way. So I go back and take the month variety, and I say we have the day format. Let's say it appears on the 10th of each month. And then I can add an omission rule. What means this? I think for the first demonstration, I will leave it out. We can come back later to it. This means if you know that there's one issue not published of the expected ones, for example, you have a daily newspaper which does not appear on a holiday, you can leave out Christmas or New Year or whatever you want to. And combination rules, this would be applicable to double issues, for example, if you have a publication which appears monthly and maybe in summer there's a break and there's only one issue for July and August, you can put it here together. But in the first place, to make it easier to understand and to show it one time, yes, in the way without any special regulations, I will leave it outright here. So the next thing to do would be the labeling. we have to add a label. And what does this mean? We have here a label style, and there are two options to choose between. One of them would be chronology, and the other one would be enumeration. And I think it would be best if I show it in an example. For example, let's start with chronology, and we have chronology format. We can have chronology date, month, or year, and I will be choosing here the year. So this will be the way that the year will be displayed on the label of the expected pieces. And you can also here choose which language shall appear. Yeah, the next field is the year format, and here we got an example. You can choose between these two possibilities. You can display the year in full or only the last two digits and leave out the century. Let's choose here the full format that we have 2023 in our display. And I can go on and add further labels. And here, for example, we can have an enumeration choose the choice, and the enumeration format. There are also, again, two opportunities. We have numeric enumeration and we have textual enumeration. For textual enumeration, you would have to choose, you have to create a pick list and would have to choose the pick list that would apply to this publication pattern here. For example, it would be possible to display the season labeling, which Owen already talked about. So in this example, I will choose the numeric enumeration format, and then you get this new line where you see the level 1, number of units, format sequence, and so on. And in this case, we have, let's say, an enumeration of volume 1, which appears in 2024, and then there are 12 issues which are coming. And so we have the first level. The first level would be the volume level. You can add it here in the internal node to make it clear that this is a volume. And then you have here number of units, one volume in the year 2024. And yeah, then you can choose between 3 different options for the enumeration. You can display the volume as an ordinary number, or you can choose the ordinal number. So would it be the first and the second and third volume, or Roman numerals are also introduced here. I'm choosing this usual way of numbering. And then the next part will be the sequence, and here you have to decide what is the publication pattern of this journal. The volumes are numbered, and the first volume appears in 2024, and the second volume appears in 2025. And this also numbered volume 2 and volume 3 of next year. So this is a continuous sequence and not a reset. Reset would mean that it would all start again with number one the next year. And now I can add a further level. This would be the issue or piece level. And so we have here 12 issues which appear in this volume. And once again, I can choose here the format. And this enumeration would not be continuous. It could be continuous, but in my example, it shall be not. So that it would start again next year with issue number 1, volume 2. And so I would have to choose reset at this place. And you can now add even more levels to it if you have enumeration, which are quite complicated. So the system offers the opportunity to break it down further, and I think this is quite a good aspect of the system. We leave it right now up to this one, and then the next step before I really can create my or save my publication pattern is a template. You may already have seen that there are also some items in which you get some information about the fields that are displayed here, and there are also links to further information. So we are here now in the Folio Wiki, where Owen has created some information, some documentation about using templates and on the types of labeling. This is quite cumbersome in the first place. I really had to test it quite a long time till I get used to it, how to use it. And this is a thing that we are already aware of, that this should be improved in the future, and there's already some work has been done in this place. But right now here in this Navy release, we only have these this documentation where we can see what other possibilities to choose for our templates. Here are the token examples, and then here you see the type of labels are chronology or enumeration, and depending on what you have chosen, you have to pick up one of these tokens to build your display summary for the pieces that will be creating. So let's say that we want to display it in the way that it ends up in volume 1.2024, issue 1. Then we can really type in the word volume, and the volume 1 means the volume level here in the label number 2. This is this one here. So, and this is in the enumeration template. If you look it up here, enumeration numeric, the enumeration number and the level of it. Level 1 always means the volume level, or in this case means the volume level. Level 2 is the issue level. So I could also copy it from here. So now we have the token for the volume. Then we can add here dot, and the next one, the year that would come out of the first label, which is the chronology label, and this here chronology here. So we can use this token here, chronology 1 dot year, to insert it in this place. And now, once again, issue. The issue is the second level of the numeric enumeration, which means it's quite similar to this one, but it's not level 1, but level 2. So now I'm ready to do a preview. I could also save and close this one, but this is not recommendable because right now we are not able to edit this pattern once again. This is also one of our gaps that has already been analyzed and will be improved soon. But we can make a preview in the first place. when I click on preview, I get this screen to generate predicted pieces. I can set up start date, and we had talked about start at January 2024, and when we have the values for the volume for the pieces that shall be created, we can choose level 1, which is the volume. It should start with volume 1 and issue number 1. And now I can click on preview and get. Oh, no, I shouldn't. So you see that there's a mistake in it. I have it 2 times. Yeah, it's okay. I have forgotten to delete it. The example what I put in to show you what I was trying to build up here. So you see, it's quite useful to have this preview to be able to do the correction once again. So the next try. Still some mistake in it. Oh, number
chronology.
Yeah, chronology level. I think I put it in, but chronology here.
One lot, yeah.
That's, so now we have the way it should be. We have our preview, 12 issues. You see your issue date, issue publication date for each of them is on the 10th of each month. And now if I'm contented with what I have done, I can save and close my publication pattern. And now it appears here on the publication pattern accordion. And yes, you can see here it gets a pattern ID, and you see 100 month, one month, one issue per month. And as I have already mentioned, you also add another publication pattern, maybe as draft, and for the next year, if this should be necessary. So the next step to take would be to come to our predicted pieces. The predicted pieces are made out of this publication pattern, and they are integrated here in the serials apps. And these are not yet receiving pieces, but they will be used to create receiving pieces later on. So now this has been activated. I can now just generate these pieces. And once again, I can choose a starting date. I can add a note. Once again, I have a preview here. This looks good, so I can generate. Yeah, so now we have generated piece set. This is you see we are here in the piece set corner of our display, and this is a piece set for the serial. We have 12 predicted pieces generated, but we have no receiving pieces in receiving yet. You see it's always 0 indicated on this place. And the next step would be to really generate the receiving pieces in the receiving app. You have to set up these predicted pieces here in serials first, and then go to generate receiving pieces. Yeah, now this screen appears, and it says that the receiving pieces will be generated, and but it might take a while, and the window will close automatically when the process is over. And here, once again, we have some information about the first and last piece to be created. We can set up here a time between publication and receipt, again in days. So I have chosen here the 10th of each month as publication date, and when I say, okay, it lasts another 10 days between publication and receipt, so that receipt is due on the 20th of the month, then I can indicate it here. And this is very flexible. You can see it, you can choose any time that you want. It would also mark pieces as supplement, but in this case, it would cover for all pieces, so that this is not the way to treat it right now. You could also create items and display the coding. And if you are ready, you can generate your receiving pieces. And now you get the info that that's worked. And when you see here in the serial set and the piece sets, we have now one receiving piece for each of the issues that have been created in the serial set as predicted piece. Yes, and the last step in our development would be to go to receiving and really receive the pieces that we have just generated. You see here the title in receiving. There's also a link which I can choose to open it in the receiving app. So we are now into the receiving, and you see that there are expected pieces, and here in display summary, the issues that have been predicted appear, and this field is also the one that we have here in our serials record, where the information that was created by the template is to be shown. So, and now I could go to the receiving screen and would get every expected piece on display. There's also a small bug in it. The sorting in the display summary is quite confusing. This is also one thing that we are aware of that shall be improved. I can choose pick up here the first issue and receive it. Receiving is successful. So now we have one received piece here right now with the date when receiving took place. We have the expected pieces on display that could also choose one of them directly and could say a quick receive, so that you don't have to get the whole screen with all the expected pieces that you can pick up from this list, which is sorted correctly, and it's not so cumbersome. So we have now two received pieces, and the other pieces are expected. Yeah, so that is the way that so far that we have come right now. I don't know how much time do we have. We could show quite a lot more, but I think we have something to do.
I think if we move to Joe's part, and then we can come back to it.
Okay.
I think we have until we do plenty of time.
Yeah, this is a double length session, so
Yeah.
sorry. Okay, so let me switch back to the slide deck. Okay. Binding and claiming. So we're going to pick up from where we've been at with pieces that have been received or not, as the case may be. Owen pretty well told the story of how things.
That's the question we go.
Okay. All right, so we have a couple of pieces. So we do have basic claiming support as of Quiznalia, which I can show a little bit during the live demo, but it basically allows you to identify when pieces are linked. Then say, okay, we sent a claim, which then resets the claim delay, but also allows you to delay a claim so that if you know a piece has not yet been published and it's too early claim for whatever reason, that you can push it back a certain number of days. You can also designate a piece as unreceivable. The important thing to know about designating a piece as unreceivable is it also has an impact on the status of the purchase order line, especially when you're dealing with a monograph or a closed series, when you have a fixed number of pieces. So if you know you are getting 6 pieces, you have synchronized ordering and receiving quantity. If you designate a piece as unreceivable and the rest are received, purchase order line will say, okay, all pieces have been accounted for, we can close the order. So that's just something to note, that unreceivable, as far as folio is concerned, means an order can safely be closed. You're not waiting for anything. You know what's happened. You can deal with the vendor and all of that. But folio will allow you to close, will allow you to close an order when a piece is unreceivable. Bindery support is kind of a ancillary piece to receiving. It is part of the Ramson's release. It is available in the snapshot environment. I'm also going to show it in a UAT environment today when we walk through it. And it allows the binding of pieces that are associated with a single receiving title. So when we look at the title, we're looking at the title from the PO line, not from inventory. This allows a little bit of flexibility because if you order, for instance, a monographic set or monographic series that is under one receiving title, you can bind those together if you so choose, just to allow for greater flexibility. Obviously, if you're dealing with a serial title, then you can bind issues as we just discussed. It does support holdings management between unbound and bound pieces. So during the bindery process, you can transfer the holding. You can create a new holding or transfer to another existing holding. I know a great many libraries keep unbound issues in one collection, and then once those issues have been bound into volumes, they go into an annex or into a stacks collection or something else. So the bindery app does support that transfer. The binding out also supports transferring requests in the event that an issue has a request or a hold on it. You can say, no, we're going to intervene. We're going to grab that piece and then we're going to transfer that request to the newly bound volume. There is support for that. And you do have flexibility in what you do. You can say, I want to keep the request. I want to discard the request. That is all there. We are also, okay, so I discussed claiming support just a little bit ago about identifying link pieces. In order for claiming to work, though, within the POL, you must have claim active set and you must have an expected date. If you do not set claim active or you don't have an expected date, then we're going to assume that you don't want to claim. And obviously, an expected date is required because then we know whether something is late. For Sunflower and Trillium, we are planning additional development. We're actually some fairly substantial enhancements to claiming. So in Sunflower, we are adding Edifact claiming, as well as the ability to download a file of claims or pieces to be claimed. And the business logic there is that is all going to be grouped by organization / account number. So vendor accounts get grouped together. And this is, so EBSCO, or yeah, my team Thunderjet is handling the artifact claiming and the download claiming, claiming downloads. While we're doing this, our friends at Leipzig SLU are working on email claiming and claim cycles. And we expect that work to happen in approximately trillion, possibly umbrella leaf, depends on their release cadence and their release, or yeah, how quickly they can develop. But we are working side by side in tandem. We are sharing stories. We are sharing information. I'm very, very excited about this collaboration because right now, for instance, you saw we have a claim delay. They're going to take that and they are going to convert it into true claim cycles. So you have claim delay, first claim delay, second claim delay, third claim delay, with differing levels of urgency in the contact to the vendor. So this is forthcoming. We've had meetings here at WOLFcon, and we'll continue to meet on that. So with that, I'm going to show you what we've done so far. And Zoom is just really kind of quick. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and show you. This is our user acceptance testing environment. Sorry about this. Zoom very much makes all of this a lot more interesting than it is. And I don't know if anybody here is interested in ECS, but this is actually an ECS-enabled user acceptance test environment because we've got some centralized ordering and receiving going, and we've identified a bug very, very recently, which we're working on. So in order to make this work, I need to change my active affiliation to on-site general collections. And from here, if I remember right, I can now go into receiving. Or did I not do this? No, I did not do that right. Okay, something has changed since I've been here. Okay, so I might be. All of my orders got deleted. This is not good. Sorry about this. Vendor code Joe, that's what I want. Okay. All right, so now we'll go into receiving in the correct tenant. This is why ECS makes things much more interesting. And somebody changed my settings back. Default for receiving search. Active affiliation default. Let's do that. You can't beat me. There we go. So folio quarterly. That's what I have. This is what I set up. And then my loving team went back and changed all my settings. So, okay. So I've gone ahead and created folio quarterly, and I've done it seasonal. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to receive all. And yeah, boom, receive. And they are now all here. What I'm going to do now that they've been received, they've gone through the whole process. And now we've added, did I forget to do something? Yeah, I'll fix that. We've added two new pieces here. We've got bound and not bound. So when we bind pieces, we do not suppress them. When we bind pieces, we suppress them, we do not delete them. So let me go back into ordering and thought I told that I want to find a reactive. Okay, so now that I've got binary active, I can go back into receiving and go back into. There, now we've got the bind pieces. So you do have to set bind active to true, or else it won't show up. But setting bind active to true not only does that, but it also allows you to facet on binary active. So if you're doing binary active as a process rather than ad hoc title, you can simply go into the receiving app and search for binary active. From there, you get a list of all titles where binary active is true, and that will allow you quick access to anything that needs to be bound. In this case, we literally only have the one order, so it's not going to make any difference. Go into actions, bind pieces. And now we've got the pieces to be bound. I recognize that the display summary is, again, out of order in our active development environment, or if you go into snapshot, and we try this in snapshot, you should see that the pieces to be bound now appear in order of expected date. So we solved that just on the binary screen. We can come back and fix that in other places. But if you have an annual, you will have, they should appear in chronological order as long as you have your expected dates set up correctly. The top of the receiving screen, you'll notice we have barcode, column, and material type, permanent loan type, location. You'll notice that is all item information because binding must create an item. So what we'll do is barcode and call number are optional. Then a barcode, I'm going to leave the call number blank because it can inherit whatever call number is from the instance. We must select a material type. You must select a permanent loan type. And you must select a permanent location. So I have the ability, all of these pieces were received in Asian on site as the location, but I can go ahead and create a new holding elsewhere. And you only need to do this if you want to create a new holding that, like if I wanted to put it in Asian where on site, or if there were an annex. And this is how you can separate bound from unbound. So just select the permanent location, and then you select the pieces you wish to bind. So I can do all four, or I can do some of them. So choose all four, and I'm going to click the bind button. When I click bind, it's going to check, are there any item records, are any of these items, or are they just pieces? Are there any requests attached? It's going to do all of that in the background. In this case, we don't have items attached, but it's not a big problem if there are item records attached. What it will simply do is change the status of those item records to unavailable, and will leave markers to the old obsolete items, so you can go back, keep track of those stats, keep track of any notes, and so on and so forth. We don't actually delete those items. They remain in the system, and we've left a few breadcrumbs for you to be able to get back to them. So you'll notice now that the pieces have been bound. The receiving accordion is currently blank because everything has been bound. But if I change this from not bound to bound, those pieces are once again back there, and you can view the entire history. If I go in and I look at the piece history, if I check the status log of that, we still see the full status log of that piece and what's been going on with it. It is technically possible, once a piece has been bound, that you could go back and unreceive it. I don't know why you would, but we were asked to leave the ability intact to unreceive a bound piece. Additionally, at the very bottom, we have a bound items accordion. And this is the link to all of the bound piece or bound item records that we have. So in this case, we have this new barcode that we just created. It has a status of in process. And when I open this link, it opens in inventory in a new tab. So you can go through and take care of any additional cataloging that might need to happen. Scrolling all the way to the bottom, we have bound pieces data, which shows a barcode of no barcode because there's no item. This will bring you back to the individual piece record. If there were an item record, it would show the old barcode, and that would link back to the old item record. We also have a little X on the side. And this is because we were asked for the ability to unbind in the event of an oopsie. So if you need to remove a piece from a bound item, because you made a goof and are like, oh, I only wanted to do 2 of them, not 4. What we can do, we can go ahead and do that, is I'm going to remove July item. And I'm going to remove October from the bound item. And those 2 have been unremoved, so now I only have January and April. Switching back to the receiving app, I'm going to just refresh my screen. And these pieces that I had bound and then unbound, they now show as unbound. And the reason for that is if I look at the item piece, there's this little bound checkbox, and that's what tells me whether it's been bound or not. And if you have a need to go in and manually designate a piece as bound, you can do that. Like if you get an annual that's soft bound and you need to bind it, you don't want to go through this whole process, but you don't want it showing up in receiving, you can just manually say this has been bound, so don't worry about it. So that is entirely up to you. So that in a nutshell is the current status of binding will be the status of binding with the Ramson's release in Folio. The next thing I want to talk about is forthcoming development in claiming. So I'm going to go ahead. So this is a sneak preview of what we have in mind, but we are building a new claimings application interface UI. I don't know what they're calling it this week, but you will have claiming. We even have a new icon for it. It will show up along with receiving and check-in, check-out orders. It'll get grouped in with, I don't know yet what else that Eureka is doing with it, but it'll be in there somewhere. It is distinct from the receiving app because these are all receiving pieces, not receiving titles. The idea here is when you go into this claiming interface, by default, it is looking for every receiving piece that has a status of late with claim active. And by rule, it should not be late unless claim is active, but I'm going to leave both of those in place just to keep things safe. So it looks for these, and then it shows everything with this that meets these criteria. But we're also going to need other receiving item or receiving piece filters intact as well. So you could actually say, no, I want to see everything, even if it's not late, I want to see it. When Sloop and Leipzig complete their work, we will also add claim cycle. So show me only cycle 2, show me only cycle 3. Anything that based on received data. All of this will be available so that you can generate reports. Then again, you can go through and select the pieces you want to act on. Typically, you're going to want to claim them. We are working to see about the feasibility of grouping by vendor as well. So you know, we do have the organization name, organization code. We are looking to see if we can simplify that. There's some architectural challenges with that because they're looking at 2 different databases and the joins get to be a little bit difficult. But yeah, typically you would want all of your Anthem together, all of your Adobe together, and so forth. What I wanted to highlight here were a couple of things. So we have 2 instances of the California Law Review. Both are 2023, but one is 111 volume 111 number 4 and volume 111 number 5. So we are differentiating between the pieces and not just the titles. And here we have 1 piece associated with number 4 and 3 pieces associated with number 5. This is to show partial receipt. This is to show we got nothing. So we ordered 3, received none of them. To account for all of that, then what we can do is we highlight them. We say send the claim, delay the claim, or mark them as unreceivable. On the background, once you hit send claim, then it is going to generate an Edifact job through Export Manager, just like you would get through the orders, through the Edifact orders, which will be set up in your organization's integrations. If there is no organization integrations, or you have the integration set up to download, then it will download. Export Manager will simply generate a file that you can download from Export Manager and maintain all the logs. And the file formats available are EDI and CSV. So that is all I had to show for what we're doing on binding and claiming. And at this point, I'm going to pass things back to Owen to discuss next steps.
Okay, so I'm gonna just talk about the next steps for the serials management module as opposed to the stuff that Joe's just been covering. I'll keep this brief. We know that there are some gaps in functionality and some things we can improve about the serials management and prediction patterns, publication patterns application. Ramson's is the next release, and so for that we're targeting some support at the moment in Quesnalia. When you create a receiving piece, you have create item and display to public options. The display to public is new for Ramson's, I think. So we'll be adding support for those when you create the receiving pieces from a set of predicted pieces. You'll be able to set those as well, so that it will automatically create items and populate the display to public checkbox. Create item is being backported to Quesnalia CSP4, which is now released. Actually, I said it was upcoming when I wrote the slide. That's been released now, so create item is in Quesnalia. We've got some bug fixes and accessibility fixes. Where at the moment, once you create a predicted piece set, you can't delete it. So like if you accidentally create a predicted piece set and it's wrong, there's no kind of, I mean, it doesn't matter as such, like it won't cause, it causes annoyance because it's noise in the system, but it's not doing anything. It's just sitting there as some data you don't need. So we'll be introducing the ability to delete those any predicted piece set that you didn't mean to create, or you were created incorrectly. At the moment, when you do obviously if you predict this year, Peter showed, if you predict like it's 2024 and it's volume 1, issue 1. Next year will be volume 2, issue 1 for 2025. When you do that kind of creation of the predicted piece set, you get prompted for those values. At the moment, those are always blank. In the Ramsden's release, you'll be able to choose, like, it will automatically base it on the last predicted piece set you created. So if you created 2024, volume 1, issue 1 last time, it will now next time automatically say, do you want to create the 2025 volume 2, issue 1? But if you were doing some older stuff, you can also pick other predicted piece sets, so you can follow on from any other predicted piece set in the system that you've already set up for that serial. We know that one of the things that we've had feedback on is that it's a bit too easy to accidentally create the same predicted piece set twice. So we'll have an error check so that if you try and create a predicted piece set for 2024, when you've already created one for 2024, it will warn you. It won't stop you because it's not invalid to want to do that. But it usually you don't want to. It's so we so we'll that works in process already. And we know, as Peter was showing, the serials publication, that when you're doing the label template, kind of having to type those things in, that's a bit painful. Ultimately, we wanted to take an approach a bit like, for those of you who've seen the circulation notices, it uses a similar kind of approach, but you have a little button where it says insert token, and you can choose, like, you don't have to remember any of the syntax, you just choose, like, put in, you know, the patron name or whatever. And we were going to go with a similar approach, but that is quite a lot of needs quite a lot of development. So what we've done instead is that for each label you add, it will automatically have the a list of all the tokens available for that label with a copy and paste. So you can just copy and paste those into the field and then edit them as you want to. You don't need all the complete bits, or you can put in the text in between, like the volume and issue that Peter showed. So rather than having to type those out, it's just a copy and paste directly from the screen in front of you. So Peter was having to kind of go to the wiki and copy it, but it would just be there. And that, I think, you can see that on snapshot already, and I think it's a significant improvement. At the moment, once you create a publication pattern, you can't edit it. We're adding support for editing those. Once the publication pattern has been used, it won't be possible to edit it, because once it's used, we have to know what it was. And have that linked to the any predicted piece sets that it's generated. So what will happen in that case is that if you realize you want to now edit it somehow, it will actually create a copy of that for you, and you'll edit the copy and save the copy. That should be pretty transparent to you as a user, but it will be archiving the old one and giving you a new one that you can edit. That work is started. You can see we've done some of the work for that. I think we're okay for Ramsden's, but I think that's a little bit at risk because it's we're approaching the Ramsden's release deadline. So there's still quite a bit of work to do in the next 4 weeks to get that done. Looking ahead to Sunflower, we'll do some more work to make it easier to manage predicted piece sets. We're introducing the deletion in Ramsden's, or we have to introduce the deletion in Ramsden's, but editing predicted piece sets and the pieces. So if you predict a load of sets, a load of pieces, and then you realize there's something wrong, you might want to edit that before you create the receiving pieces. So just adding in some more support there. And one of the things we've had a big request for is that at the moment, when you create a set of predicted pieces, you get to create 1 year at a time. And there are kind of reasons for that. But like if you set up and you can create multiple ones, so you just say like create one and then create another and create another. You can do that 5 times and you've got 5 years worth. But people want to like just say create me the next 5 years. And so we'll add support for that. We will need to be a little bit careful there because if you're creating like if it's an annual, creating 5 years worth is just 5 things to create, and so that's not a problem. But if it's a daily, then it's 1,500 over 1,500 things to create, and so we will have to put some limits on that. Like it won't be like you can just create as many things as you want because it will just start to take longer and longer, and it'll be not practical to from a UI perspective to that happen in a reasonable amount of time. And at some point you have to decide we can't do this in real time. So we'll put a limit on that so that you're not trying to create thousands and thousands of pieces, but we will allow you to create multiple years at once as long as it doesn't exceed that overall limit. And especially for annuals, it makes a lot of sense. Like create 10 years worth of annuals. Might as well do that right now. Creating 10 years worth of weeklies maybe makes a bit less sense because it's 52 a year. We're also in discussions with some of the developers on the Lists app side. The Lists app is being, I think, it should be possible to display. I'm not sure when this is coming actually, but to display receiving pieces in the Lists app. So the Lists app is kind of a lightweight reporting, if I can say that. I'm not sure whether that's an entirely approved description, but a way of kind of being able to say, get me all the receiving pieces that fill particular criteria, and being able to like then display those in a dashboard widget, which those of you not familiar with the dashboard, is a way of bringing together information from multiple applications and displaying it on one screen. At the moment, it works with the ERM apps only, but we're hoping to extend that. And this app should through that enable access to receiving pieces as well as other information already supported by the Lists app, like orders and inventory. We know that like even with like the addition of the cut and paste, copy and paste for the template things, the labeling is still maybe overly complicated. We're still discussing exactly what an improvement there will look like. I mentioned the insert token functionality, but I think that overall we want to have ways of making it really easy to set up a publication pattern without having to do a lot of work on the label. And we're talking to Peter and Kirsten about like what that needs to look like for that to be as simple as possible. And we also know that when we looked at the functionality in the first place, like the question about why would you not have reusable publication patterns? Like if I've got a monthly publication, why don't I have a reusable one? And when we did analysis, we looked at patterns that were in use across libraries. So we looked at patterns from the GBB libraries, and we looked at patterns from Duke and from the Library of Congress. And what we found is actually the amount of reuse is really minimal. So like actually Library of Congress use Voyager at the moment, which has that idea of reuse, and what you find is most of them are used at most twice or 3 times maximum, because they all are different in a very small way. And it's because of things like that labeling. Like that labeling is just not consistent. Rather than thinking about it in terms of having reusable, like set up a publication pattern once and then reuse it, we're probably more going to look at templates that will fill in the major parts of the publication pattern. So like filling in like it's monthly, once a month, you can do that with a template. That there would be 2 levels of enumeration you could do with a template. And so you could build up like quick templates to be able to fill that in really quickly, rather than without kind of having that thing where it's not really like the whole thing altogether is reusable, but bits of it are. So I think we will be looking at how we can support that through quick publication patterns or some kind of pattern template. Again, there's more to, obviously this is looking a bit far out now, but we need to work out soon what that's going to look like, because we'll start development once Ramsden's is done. And finally, desired but not scheduled yet, extending the properties of the serial record. Serial record is really basic at the moment. It basically links together a public purchase order line with the publication pattern. It could have some more information linked into it and description. Being able to do things like find all the serials from the same publisher or the same vendor. That's the kind of search you can't do at the moment, which we can see as desirable. Peter mentioned combined issues and omitted issues. I think the bottom line is that just doesn't work well enough right now, and it doesn't work well enough when it comes to labeling, as well as Peter discovered some bugs last week as well. So there's definitely some more work to do on that. Obviously, bugs we should fix ASAP, but we need better handling of the combination pieces, especially because it's limited at the moment. It doesn't really fit for the key use cases. Textual enumeration. Textual enumeration, that's things like we didn't demonstrate this, but if you have like the season labeling, that's any kind of repeated list of values where like you just cycle through the same list again and again and again. So like spring, summer, winter, fall, winter, or it could be obviously like even fall could be autumn for English, British publications, but fall for American English publications, and obviously it would be in different languages as well. So being able to support better translations, you can kind of do it at the moment because you can have multiple seasons lists, one for each language, but it's a bit clunky. So some improvements there, and for the user experience of that, I think you saw when Peter was saying you have to set up a pick list, and then he clicked on a link and it had a huge number of things in it, none of which really were relevant to what Peter was trying to do at the time, except one. Yeah, so making that like list just be the ones you want to use on that bit of the screen. At the moment, it grabs a whole load of data which it doesn't need. So yeah, and enhancing templating. Some of the options at the moment, like when you say there's a chronology, you can say like use aspects of that chronology, like day of the week, in the labeling, but that is based on the expected date of publication. So if you have a publication that says it's published on the 1st of January, but it's actually the February issue, like you can't do, you can only do that by working around the problem at the moment, because if you say put in the month, it will put in the month of publication. And so we think that there might be a way, there are probably different ways of approaching that, but having something where in the template you can say, I want to use like the enumeration, but 1 month on, or 5 days on, whatever it is from the enumeration. There might be some other approaches we could take there as well, but somewhere in there we need to be able to do things like the 1st of January edition is actually the December edition or the February edition, or however they've done it, because they don't always label that in relation to the publication date. And really probably getting even further out in terms of what we've discussed. We at the moment, when we create receiving pieces, they all get created one at a time, and that's a little bit of a friction from our perspective, because if something goes wrong in the middle of that process, then you might have created 5 receiving pieces out of the 12 you meant to create. And we'd really like to just say, create these 12 and get back, like, them all done. So that's something to discuss with Dennis and Joe. I think we also probably all see the need, and I say all, I mean across cereals receiving inventory, the need to work out this structured enumeration and chronology, because at the moment there's a chronology field and an enumeration field. Now you can shove in like some data information to chronology, and you can shove in some enumeration into enumeration, but there's only one level. Like it means that you end up with a mixture of numbers and text in there, which is what we use the display summary to do instead. But it would be better if we could have, like, if there's a volume and issue, we should have a volume field or an issue field, or enumeration 1, enumeration level 2 field, something like that. So you could actually store that information at the right level, and then you can do things like sort by volume and issue number, which you just can't do at the moment. There's no way of doing that, because you could sort by the enumeration field, but that is a textual field, not a numeric field, so you can't know. And obviously, if they were numbered with Roman numerals, it like throw the whole thing out as well. So it's just like not how it's not quite fit for what we need at the moment. But that would require work across all the modules to achieve that, because we have to do that together. Okay, that's all the upcoming stuff. I'll pass to Kirsten.
Yeah, so at the end of this very long session, I asked you to switch with me from the functional pieces of this wonderful thing to how can this happen? I mean, it's not just bringing together special matter experts and skilled developers. There's a little bit behind you need to consider. And to give you some background, I mean, most of you, this is already knowledge. Since we are in Folio, we do gap analysis, right? We are defining our requirements, and the majority of the requirements and the development work is normally done through our main special interest groups and the EBSCO community team, the development teams. So that is more or less taken care of. But from the very beginning, some development has been funded and brought forward in additional initiatives. So often it's just local, regional requirements or additional community requirements. And why does the community have additional requirements? Sometimes institutions want to go live, they need some things earlier than it's planned. We have no resources available. The required functionality is not developed exactly as someone is envisioning it, or it's simply just a local thing or a regional thing. And how it started with the serials development, that was such a thing. It's already was long talked about. And some people said, we really don't need that. We will have just the resources in future. Others said, oh, we definitely need that. We have a special collection of thousands of subscriptions and we'll really need that. So it was a lot of discussion going on. And as knowledge integration and Owen Stevens and the GBV are already working since 2016 together and have a lot of experience in all those defining requirements, workflow definitions, in the development. And in development always means following community guidelines. Look for that the integration in Flower releases is taken care of carefully, go through the PC and TC processes. So there's a lot to consider before you have the first demo up and running. And all this means we don't like it, but it is like it, it's funding. So from the very beginning, the idea was always being transparent. You can do your development, of course, at home. You can download open source software and tweak it as you like it. Or you decide to go into the community, talk everything through in the SIGs. In this case, it was mostly the ERM SIG, and add on to your planet scope. So that is what we did with the serials development. And before you can realize, you need to find allies. And I will just concentrate on the bold things because the other things already have been covered. You need to ensure the funding. Otherwise, you're running out of money, your development stops, and everything goes for nothing. So, of course, you need to define the exact requirements. Otherwise, you don't need how much it will cost. You need to find someone who's able to develop what you want and who's able to follow the folio process if you have that ambition to provide such an app for the whole community. But then other aspects are coming in. You need to organize the project in the community. You need to think about, do I want to have an international SIG? Do I do it all on my own? Which one's easier to do? And that's one thing I would like to point you all to, is to ensure sustainable maintenance. Because if something is already there, it needs to be maintained. And so that's how we did this as an example. I think there are many other examples, and it's maybe worth discussing examples in the community. In 2022, knowledge integration, Owen Stevens, Villagy, and the Duke University at that point. And that was the first time we had an American-German cooperation, which was very tempting and very nice to have. We said, okay, we do the serials app. Both institutions, Duke and Villagy, gave the initial money, and it lasted until we had the definition of the requirements ready, the UI process was done, and we had a development concept more or less ready, right? That's how I envisioned it. And then the bad news hit us, Duke left the community, and what to do now? So we decided to continue with the funding, that's just the Villagy, and luckily we could raise the interest with EBSCO, who now had Library of Congress online. So we said, okay, we're joining forces and we try to do this together. So all the add-ons that were necessary around the serials app, like the receiving app, the binding, the claiming, was brought forward by EBSCO. So another cooperation was born. And the organizational part was that the development was done by KINT and by EBSCO people. The product owners have been Owen Stevens and Joe Reimers, who already showed you. The functional perspective was brought in by the whole community, more or less. We ventilated everything through the acquisition SIG. And a little bit by the Villagy as well. So we go through all these approval processes through product council and technical council, and a lot of communication was organized in the Slack channel for the sake of as much transparency as possible in the time we have for the development. So why I'm telling you that? If you're considering doing something else like this, normally you have two phases. You have phase one, everybody is excited, you have a kickoff, you're defining the requirements, you're doing a concept, coding starts, you have the first testing, you have pilots, you're bringing in more and more people who are interested in this, and luckily you then have the first release ready. In this case, it's Casnadia. That's great, but then, what happens then? Then you go to production, and you find out, okay, you need more fine-tuning, you find all these errors, or Owen just reflected on. You want to have more, the community comes in. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to have this and that and this? And all those are really, really good ideas. So you're starting to enhance the development. And of course, you need to support the code through the maintenance and maintain it and go through the release cycles, because each release brings something more. Maybe we even need to change the platform as a sunflower release or release art. So that means a lot of responsibilities. Development never ends. You need to be aware of that if you start something like that. Maintenance never ends. Community means you need to balance your own interests, so the ones who are giving the money and may want to have quick results against everything, every other feedback that's coming in, and that's very valuable and helps to make the development better. But you need to keep the timeline, and somehow maybe your funding might run out. So you need to ensure that this doesn't happen, so that the development is sustainable from the funding perspective and from the development perspective. You need to pick development companies or people who are doing the development that are hopefully there for a longer time. And you need the organizational structure behind it. So someone who's keeping everything together, who's doing all the communication stuff, who's making presentations to others and all those kinds of things. And while this is maybe absolutely not new to you, and maybe it is self-explaining, it is still a challenge. So if you're planning to start such a thing, it's still the normal thing that initial funding normally covers just the development phase. And money givers always think, is it ready now? No, it's not. So how do we ensure as a community ongoing funding for things we have started? If we are not, for example, a vendor that simply sells the software or other services to their customers and have some revenue so that they can continue to develop, who's ensuring lifelong maintenance? So, and how do we keep the sustainable knowledge our development teams have built and the eco-planning functional expertise, how do we keep that in the community and how do we build on that? So we want to ensure that we need to maintain the organizational structure behind that. So we need necessary stuff. We really want to avoid orphaned apps. That's always a problem if you have orphaned apps. I mean, we don't have a problem if they are not needed any longer. But if yes, there should always be someone who's picking it up. So that was a little bit of my motivation or our motivation, because we envisioned the serious development walking through different states of cooperation, different partners. It was a success. It's there now. You're sitting here, you're interested, that's good. But yeah, now's the next pot of money on the market. And how do we ensure that? It's something, if I can raise your interest, go to your local community council member, project council member, or any other governance person and ask for ideas. How can we make that happen? Can we build a business model that balances those interests and ensures that those good initiatives are possible in the future as well? That is what I wanted to do as additional. So do we have some time for some questions?
5 minutes.
Okay, so I'm opening up the chat because I see, how is that? I see it.
So there was one question specifically from Cara, which is about creating item records from serials. So it says, in receiving, if you remove the display summary, you can enter the copy number, enumeration of chronology instead. Yes, you absolutely can. Like that's one of the advantages of doing it this way. Once the receiving item is created, you can edit the receiving item exactly as it's needed. So if you have different local practice, you could just edit it. But even if it was like sometimes you make the prediction pattern and that's normally okay, but then one of the issues comes in with some special feature in it, and it says on it, it's special, it's called not just volume 1, issue 1, but volume 1, issue 1, special feature, and you can edit that either in the display summary or in one of the other fields as you need to. So you can make that adjustment as you do the receiving, as you normally would. The prediction pattern helps you do essentially bulk creation, following like some sometimes complex rules, but it doesn't stop you then adjusting that either the local requirements or just based on the issue in front of you.
Any more questions? I think there are no more questions on chat. Yeah, Andreas.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
It's really great to see we also tried it with it, and I am some questions have been asked. Okay, I sort of need to wait until the full presentation because we had also we found out that we wanted to do the patterns for animals and we wanted to be possible. The template was so I will just to give you support. Yes, we know what you are, but really glad to everything. Right. And therefore, I think most of my questions have been answered. It's not most main things. And yes, so thank you very much.
Alexis.
Regarding, so if an institution wanted to try to do something like this or combine with other institutions or organizations to fund something, and you need, it feels a little chicken egg to me. I have never done this before. So if you know what functionality you want, maybe you don't have specific, even if it's going to have specific requirements, I have no concept of how much this would cost. I have no idea how much funding we would need. Like, where do we even, to even get my head around what kind of money I need to ask for? I'm nervous about putting in a ton of work, having my staff put in a ton of work to develop requirements and specs and all of that. And then whatever it is we want is completely too expensive for us to even think about funding. So I'm not sure that's a question, but
I
how
know
much does this sort of thing cost?
can maybe give you some feedback out of practice. Yes, that's the most difficult part. And from my standpoint, I'm doing this now for 10 years with knowledge integration. We are doing another project with index data. This is always the point where the only solution is you need to discuss it as early as possible. And if you have a development partner at hand already, it's a lot easier because you can sit together with the developers, with the responsible management level and say, okay, we are planning this and that. Where are we going to? So you both start with some kind of spike or some kind of idea first. And at that point, you know, okay, this is the scope, it will cost X $1,000. Then you go and define the contract. It is a process. And I really can't judge what, because EBSCO gave in their resources just the manpower. So I don't really know what it costs.
But I would also add to that, I mean, we all work from the same Confluence and from the same Jira, and we work tightly with the SIGs. So before you even start engaging a developer, I think it's worth engaging with the SIGs and engaging with the community at large to say, we're interested in this broad piece of functionality. Get that conversation going, and that'll help gauge a broader interest in it, but it will also help shape what that might look like. And as a product owner, when I have an understanding of the scope and the shape of what it is you're trying to accomplish, I can look back at the architecture and say, this actually looks like something relatively easy that we could do, or this is going to require significant development. So when it comes to having that conversation, we already have some concept, like I'm not going to say, okay, this will take 3 sprints, but I have a concept where I can say, we can deliver this relatively quickly with one team, or it's going to require significant amounts of time, and then we can reframe. But that will at least narrow things down somewhat, but also bringing into the community opens the door that others might say, yes, we really want that. Let's combine funds.
Sure.
Let's pool our money and do it.
I mean, we have 2 more questions. Maybe we can do this very, very quickly.
I was curious, looking at, we migrated a year ago. We spent the last year setting up all of our series. But looking at the claiming functionality and the binding functionality, activating those, that's something you have to do in the QOL. So are we gonna have to go back and edit our POLs, or am I missing anything?
In theory, I don't know if bulk edit works in POLs, but in theory it should. That would be my initial. It also depends on, so the claim active went live in Quizmail, the binary stuff goes live in minutes.
We're still on topic, so.
Okay.
Not right there.
The answer I think is yes, it will be getting, but the question is how easy is it to do that?
Right, but I think bulk edit is gonna be fine.
Okay, I haven't seen POLs in long.
Guys,
I don't think it's fair and abused. Okay, I'm a little bit short with the people. I'm sorry, but I think everybody wants coffee.
Sorry, yeah, I have a few guys can be fine, and as we know, serials have been a major pain point from the user side and how to review this, so. Lots of great ideas in there. I'm wondering, how do I advocate for like specific fields or to be shown to the public? Because I can see some of my receiving information in inventory right now, but it seems like there's some great fields coming up, and I'm just kind of confused as to which ones are good for public display versus.
So, okay, so I think, as I understand, the current situation is the display summary is being added to the effective call number. And that is the first route supported to get that display summary, so essentially the issue label out to the discovery system. And that, and I think that's in Westnadia.
it's either Quizmail or Ramson's, but it's basically updating that jar tab, which is what Fox do. And I know we did that work, it's done, I just don't remember if we released it or if it's about to be released. But we did it, and it's either there or it wasn't there.
But taking that on a step to do more, is the challenge and the challenge for us, for Joe and myself and Dennis as well, is that that's something that has to be coordinated across MMC, ACQC, and RAC. So I would suggest that if I were you, I would go to the cross-app interaction scene. That's so Tara from Index Data, Tara Barnett is the convener of that, and I was asked her to get that question on the agenda for the cross-app, the interaction scene, and that's probably where I'd start, because at least that means that scene brings together product managers from across portfolio to exactly talk about things that has to work across multiple applications, and that's the situation we're in here. So that's where I start. Yeah, it is challenging because ultimately you have to persuade every one of those interest groups that this is the thing they should work on. Like,
That's part of the organization.
yeah,
Okay, I think,
it's been a long session.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for your patience.